Hey everybody, Brother Mal just stopping by here to give you a brief outline and overview of our next upcoming Japan Journal special presentation. We don't want you to miss it. Check this out. We open with a notification that all men are created equal with a question mark. Are we? A lie at the heart of America's founding documents. That's what we're going to explore. And it is by your host, Brother Malcolm, host of Japan Journal. Now, we go to our first slide. We talk about we the people. Let's think about that. The first three words of the preamble to the Constitution. We the people, or just some of the people, is the question we're asking. Let's check it out. Freedom of speech, but not for the enslaved, right? Yeah, think about this now. You all worried about Donald Trump interfering, threatening the Constitution, but the Constitution was written for Donald Trump and all white male landowners from the outset. Don't get it twisted. We may have some amendments, some civil rights amendments, but you are not part of that. You are not part of that. We don't look like them. Freedom of speech, sure. Limitations exist, but not for the enslaved. In our Constitution, women were entirely and purposefully left out. Look for it, think about it, understand the history of that document. A system of legalized hypocrisy is what it is. Look at the pictures. Oh, you got a bunch of white guys from England who were sponsored by the king and privileged because they owned the land. And they are the ones who built the country and for whom the Constitution was really designed. Capitalism over humanity, property rights first. Property also included human property. African slaves were property. And then we come up with who counts as the people. Well, look at the people in the image there. You got some indentured white servants, you got some Native Americans, you got some black Africans. Who counts as the people is the question we're raising today. And of course, there's the silencing of women, even white women. That's why they're mad today, because they're still trying to be relegated to that role that they were conceived in performing at the outset of the establishment of the United States of America. Who counts as people? Again, who counts as the people? The only real people are the people with whom we made treaties. And I say we figuratively, I had nothing to do with it, nor did my people. But they made treaties with natives of America, and look at the treaty was broken there. Oh, and they killed them and committed genocide. All men are created equal? What a question. And then there's the African slaves who were relegated to three-fifths of a human being. Oh, we were not human to them. We were three-fifths so that they could calculate a population vote among the southern states against the northern states. Northern states who didn't want to acknowledge the humanity of all of those African slaves. So in order not to give a disproportionate advantage to the white slavers, they said, okay, three-fifths of a human being is all we'll give you for all them black folks in your populace down there. So a closing summary and a call to action. Now you know, see, the problem is that the system is broken. The problem is it was built this way. And if we, as African Americans and progressive thinkers, as lovers of justice, do not rise up to challenge this truth, we will continue to be governed by a lie. Donald Trump and the MAGA minions seek to drag this nation back into the past, into a time when we, the people, meant them, not us. They ain't like us. But not on our watch. From exile in Japan to the streets of Atlanta, Detroit, Oakland, and Harlem, we raise our voices in a new revolution of truth, y'all. Let this be our charge. to rewrite the narrative, to reimagine the republic, and to reaffirm our dignity. No justice, no peace, y'all. No truth, no democracy, baby. This is your brother Malcolm reporting live from Japan, calling on you to make history, not just remember it. Power to the people, y'all. I'm out. From the mountaintops of Kyoto to the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, this is Brother Malcolm speaking to you in exile. Not hiding from the truth, but proclaiming it louder from across the seas. Welcome to another soul-shaking edition of Japan Journal. Today, we pull back the veil of American mythology to expose the rot at the root, the founding documents, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Federalist Papers, which speak of liberty while shackling Black bodies, of justice while silencing women, and of democracy while enshrining oligarchy. This ain't just a history lesson, y'all, it's a reckoning. So let's begin.
From GNN, the Global News Network, a division of Totown Communications Company Japan. Japan Journal. With Mal Adams. A Black Buddha Productions joint, of Japan. And now, your host, Malcolm W. Adams.
Welcome back to the program. You're tapped into GNN, the Global News Network, a division of Totown Communications Company Limited, on this edition of Japan Journal, with their host, Mal Adams here. Let's talk about the myth of all men are created equal. All men are created equal. Noble words, right? But what did Thomas Jefferson really mean? Let's not forget, the same man who penned these words owned over 600 human beings. He didn't mean Black men. He didn't mean Native men, and Lord knows he didn't mean women. The phrase was a sleight of hand, a rhetorical sugar cube, and a cup of poison. In the original draft of the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson condemned King George for perpetuating slavery, but that clause was conveniently removed to satisfy Southern delegates. The foundation of America was not built on equality. It was built on compromise. Compromise with racism, with patriarchy, with greed. And from the start, this republic was exclusive by design. The lie is not that America was imperfect. The lie is that it was never meant to be perfect for all of us. The Constitution counts an enslaved African as 3/5 of a person, not 3/5 of a soul, not 3/5 of a citizen, 3/5 of a vote. This was not some minor oversight. It was a cold, calculated decision to boost the political power of slave-holding states while denying basic humanity to the enslaved. Imagine a system where your very breath is used against you to strengthen your oppressor. That's what the 3/5 compromise did. It gave power to the plantation elite while denying Black folks even the hope of self-determination. And don't let modern apologists fool you. This clause wasn't about compromise. It was about domination. It was about enshrining white supremacy in the very bloodlines of American law. In early America, only white male landowners could vote, not because they were more virtuous, but because they were seen as the only ones rational enough to wield political power. Women are too emotional. Black people were too inferior. Native Americans were not even counted as citizens. This wasn't democracy, it was oligarchy, masquerading in powdered wigs and quill pens. The founders believed that property was a stand-in for intelligence, that wealth equaled worth. From the jump, the system was stacked against the poor, the colored, and the feminine. And today echoes of that exclusion remain embedded in the DNA of voter suppression and economic inequality. The U.S. Constitution doesn't protect native sovereignty, it destroys it. Article 1, Section 8 refers to regulating commerce with the Indian tribes, reducing sovereign nations to economic entities. While treaties were made, they were almost never honored. Native land was stolen under the guise of manifest destiny, a euphemism for genocide. The founding fathers spoke of liberty while waging a war of extermination on Native people. Today, the erasure continues through systemic neglect, stolen resources, and broken promises. The Constitution wasn't just blind to Native rights, it was complicit in their destruction. Women were just left out of the Constitution. They were written out of every political life altogether. No mention of women's rights, no guarantee of equality, just the presumption that politics was a man's business. Abigail Adams famously wrote to her husband, "Remember the ladies." But the men didn't listen. They institutionalized patriarchy under the banner of freedom. It would take more than a century and a civil war before women could even vote. And still today, the Equal Rights Amendment has never been fully ratified. The founding documents never included women. They were and still are an afterthought in American constitutional order. You want to talk about Christian dominionism embedded in law? Well, in God we trust. But who's God? The founders may have been deists and Enlightenment thinkers, but the structure of American law evolved to reflect a Protestant Christian worldview, often hostile to other faiths and philosophies. The Constitution guarantees freedom of religion, but from early on, Christianity was privileged in law, culture, and education. The myth of moral authority became a weapon to enforce patriarchy, colonialism, and racial hierarchy. Today, Christian nationalism fuels MAGA politics. It didn't come out of nowhere. It's rooted in the same foundational documents that gave religious majorities a foothold to legislate morality. The Electoral College is often defended as the guardrail of democracy. But let's be real. It was designed to preserve the political power of slaveholding states. Under this system, smaller rural states, often with large slave populations, gained a disproportionate influence. The will of the majority was diluted to protect the interests of the minority elite. Today, the Electoral College continues to subvert democracy. Twice in 20 years, the popular vote winner lost the presidency. This isn't a flaw, it's the fulfillment of the system's original purpose, to protect the power of a privileged few. The Constitution is obsessed with property rights, life, liberty, and property, later rebranded, quote, the pursuit of happiness in the Declaration, were the pillars of American freedom. But what does freedom mean when property includes people? Slave owners demanded protections not for life, but for their wealth, which was built on the backs of enslaved Africans. Even today, property and capital receive more constitutional protection than human beings. You can sue over damaged goods faster than you can find justice for a wrongful death. That's not a bug. That's the system doing what it was designed to do. Let's talk about a system of legalized hypocrisy. The founders were brilliant, yes, but they were also hypocrites. They talked about justice while upholding slavery. They wrote about liberty while denying it to half the population. The Constitution is not a holy scripture. It is a political document, one forged in deals, debates, and deep compromises with oppression. Our job isn't to worship it. Our job is to interrogate it. And if we find it lacking, if we find it unjust, our sacred duty is to demand better. So, the courts, gatekeepers of inequality? Well, yes, they are. From Dred Scott to Plessy versus Ferguson, the courts have long upheld racial injustice. The founding documents gave judges enormous power, but little accountability. Judicial review, not explicitly mentioned in the Constitution, became a tool to entrench white supremacy. And even today, courts are stacked with ideologues who interpret the Constitution not as a living document, but as a relic frozen in 1789. Roe versus Wade, voting rights, affirmative action, all rolled back by men and women in black robes who claim fidelity to the original intent. But whose intent was that? And who was excluded from the room where it was written? Freedom of speech, but not for the enslaved. The First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech, but that right didn't apply to enslaved people. It didn't apply to abolitionists. It didn't apply to black newspapers or native tongues. Free speech was a white man's privilege. Anyone challenging the slave economy or racial order was silenced, imprisoned, or killed. Even now, protests for Black lives are branded violent or unpatriotic. The First Amendment remains unequal in its application. That's not free speech. That's conditional permission. So let's talk about we the people, or just some of the people. You see, the Constitution begins with we the people, but ask yourself, who were the people in 1787? Certainly not the enslaved, not the indigenous, not women, not the poor. We the people was always a marketing slogan, a masterstroke of political branding. But the reality then and now is that the circle of inclusion remains too small. Our mission, yours and mine, is to redraw that circle, to expand it until it includes everyone, until we the people finally lives up to its promise. So now you know, the problem isn't that the system is broken. The problem is it was built this way. And if we, as African Americans and progressive thinkers, as lovers of justice, do not rise up to challenge this truth, we will continue to be governed by a lie. Donald Trump and his MAGA minions seek to drag this nation back into the past, into a time when we the people meant them, not us. But not on our watch. From exile in Japan to the streets of Atlanta, Detroit, Oakland, and Harlem, we raise our voices in a new revolution of truth. Let this be our charge, to rewrite the narrative, to reimagine the republic, and to reaffirm our dignity. No justice, no peace. No truth, no democracy. This is your brother Malcolm in Japan reporting live from the nation at the edge of the earth and the land of the rising sun, calling on you to make history, not just remember it. Power to the people, y'all.
From GNN, the Global News Network, a division of Totown Communications Company Japan. Japan Journal. With Mal Adams. A Black Buddha Productions joint of Japan.